OnlyCans. That's
Nailed it.
Well, hello and welcome to episode 4, which should be episode 5. So this week we're doing E. Instead of D, we recorded D last week and my computer had a bit of a malfunction and we lost it.
David lost it.
Yeah, so essentially the plan is this week we're continuing on with what the original plan was to record E. And then next week we're actually bringing on a guest to record D because we've already given each other the information that we discovered.
Yep.
And it would be kind of insincere if we just like, wow, that's so interesting, even though we've already spent like 2 hours talking about it.
Although I will be repurposing some of the jokes from last time.
Oh yeah, 100%. And
They were great.
It is going to be silence from our end. But yeah, so we're going to bring on a guest and give the information to them rather than,
our mystery guest.
Our mystery guest. Who's it gonna be? Ooh.
So I'm Luke Gallagher, and
I'm Kate Murphy.
If
you're listening to this, you should know already.
I'm David O'Connor. Well, maybe this is their first one. Maybe they're really interested.
Why would you start with? Okay.
Maybe they're interested in the topic, which is
evil.
E is for evil.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
It's a broad one. This is what it is. Yeah.
With evil, like the first thing that came to mind for me was like Macbeth. Just flashbacks to English. I was like not able to handle it.
I think if you don't mind me starting, I think the first thing that came to mind when we decided on evil for me were those shitty internet quizzes for like, how evil is your personality? You
think the quizzes themselves are evil?
No, that's just what came to mind, like how shitty. It's a joke.
Yeah.
I
do that sometimes.
It's very hard to tell. So I thought something really fun. We could do a quiz. So you can take this quiz yourself at home at psychcentral.com. Quizzes, the psychopath test. Perfect. Is what we're doing today. Now, is that towing a not fair line to assume if you're a psychopath you're evil, or to make that connection?
Well, as someone who doesn't believe that evil exists, I think people will associate psychopathy with evil, so it's not too loose a connection.
Yeah,
we're not condoning
psychopathy. Sorry, I just never heard the term used that way, and it's amazing.
It's like the term psychopathy. Psychopathy. I can't even say it. I can't even say it, but I've heard it.
I've never heard it. So I like it. Yeah. Psychopathy. So
how? So how should we do this one? Should we do it like us as a trio? Are we a psychopath?
Yeah.
We will have to get like best unanimous. 2 out of 3 vote. Unanimous or best 2 out of 3?
Oh, best 2 out of 3. Or majority vote.
Majority rules. Perfect. So question number 1. Most would describe me as charming and nonchalant. I can turn my charm on and off like a faucet. Yeah, I think for me, Luke, that's kind of...
you two are. Yeah.
So the answers are not me, this describes me somewhat, or this is definitely me.
So if we're going on majority rule...
It's definitely us.
Yeah.
Question number 2. I do what I want, when I want, the moment the impulse strikes me, regardless of what others want.
A middle.
Yeah, like when we go just describes me somewhat. Because like sometimes it would be. It's not like, you know.
I'm not going to do everything everyone says.
Yeah.
I'm not going to completely disregard people either.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, what's in our best interest rather than being,
obedient.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. If something goes wrong or turns out badly, it's not my fault.
It depends on the thing.
I don't know, did you do wrong? Did you do badly?
Yeah, I think maybe it's like, maybe this is saying like, no matter what, it's not my fault. And if that's the case, that's not me at all, because I can take responsibility for things. Yeah, so like not us.
Yeah,
not us. I've gotten into legal or criminal trouble as an adult, not just speeding or a parking ticket.
Oh.
Not me.
No.
Not me.
No.
I remember.
I am easily the best at what I do, bar none. Nobody could ever take my place.
Nope.
This is secretly a self-esteem test. Alright, I do whatever I feel like doing, and I don't care what others think, or even if it's illegal.
Sometimes. Like,
yeah, we do
legal is
break
like
into
be all and end
abandoned
all.
parts
Yeah.
But
of
like,
buildings.
like the illegality part of it is like...
But the illegality part of it could be the same as trespassing, which
Yeah.
we do.
Or like having gay sex 20 years ago.
Excuse me.
20 years?
Yeah,
Something like that, yeah.
I thought you were
When
just
was it
making a
legalised in
dig.
Ireland? When was it legalised in Ireland?
I should know this. I don't know.
What kind of gay person are you? Jesus. So what are we answering for that? Not me, this describes me somewhat, or this is definitely me.
I think it's
I
somewhat.
think it's somewhat, yeah, because there's certain laws and stuff that you just don't care about, like fireworks and stuff.
Yeah.
But they're great.
Jaywalking. I'm not in America. Yeah, like not in Ireland because there's no law on jaywalking here.
Yeah, but like jaywalking in America, they all do it too as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, next question. Every person for themselves. I don't see the point in feeling sorry for other people and have no desire to help others.
No.
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 Yeah. Cool.
A few minutes.
I've gotten into legal or criminal trouble when I was a teenager. Not just a speeding or parking ticket.
This is sounding a bit like a class
Yes.
question than a psychopath question.
Oh, do go on.
I feel like if you're involved in the legal system, sometimes that's more to do with things that aren't you being evil.
But my answer to it is yes, so.
You were criminally involved as a teenager?
Somewhat.
Oh.
Is it story time with Luke?
Story time.
If it's what I'm thinking it is.
It's just, yeah, that time when I got drunk when I was 16, and then, like, that was kind of fine. There was nothing really on my permanent record as far as I know. But my parents had to, like, go see a social worker and stuff because I was caught drinking at 16 and picked up by the guards and brought to a hospital. Fun days, anyway.
But I feel like that's very much not an evil
It's really not an
trait.
evil thing.
But it could be a psychopath trait.
Yeah.
So let's hold off for a second. Well, if it comes up that we're 1/3 psychopath, we know. So what are we answering for that one? Well, I say like
Well, it's majority votes on the 2v, it's no.
Yeah.
so not me.
Yeah.
I have no problem or concern in lying in order to get what I want.
Oh, no problems.
I find it very difficult.
Oh.
But I'll try. If it's for something that I think is a greater good thing.
Yeah, I think somewhat is a good.
Yeah.
Because you wouldn't lie to like sleep with someone.
What? Why not?
Okay. Like you wouldn't lie to.
You would lie to sleep with someone.
It depends on the scenario. Who we're talking to and who am I pretending to be.
It's Daniel Radcliffe.
I will pretend to be into Harry Potter.
Will I say somewhat for that one?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Live in the moment is what I say. The future will take care of itself, and learning from your past is pointless.
Oh, no.
No.
Yeah, no.
I was almost there, but no.
2 questions left. Okay?
Yeah.
The penultimate question is I have never felt remorse, shame, or guilt about something I've said or done. They're a lot less subtle
I'm on
now.
antidepressants for a reason.
What was that?
I'm on antidepressants for a reason.
Not me. Okay, last question. I don't see the point in taking on responsibilities of any kind. They just weigh you down.
No.
Like, I want to say no, but at the same time, I kind of feel it. It's not that I don't want to, it's just sometimes I just can't do it.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
You definitely you see the point in taking on responsibilities.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and I think that's the question. Like, I think what they're saying is like, do you like, you know why responsibilities are important?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is what the question is, and like, do you agree that they are important?
Then yeah.
It's how I would interpret that question. But like, let's say not us.
Not us.
Okay, let me get the results. Oh,
No.
so no psychopathy
Okay.
is our result. We scored a total of 5 out of 24. Okay.
Oh.
You answered the quiz consistent with people who are not generally to be considered a psychopath by research methods currently used to quickly screen for psychopathy in the population. Common myth. While many people believe that psychopathy is more prevalent among CEOs and Wall Street bankers, this is a myth not supported by any research. While on the surface it may seem that many of the symptoms and traits of psychopathy, I'm saying that wrong, psychopathy might lend themselves to positions of greater power, the two are not synonymous. One of the problems is that psychopaths tend to be pretty quickly outed for their antisocial behaviors because the charm is purely superficial and easily detected over time with greater exposure to the psychopath. Congratulations for not being a psychopath today.
Yay! That's
I wonder what they say if you're a psychopath.
Psychopath shamey, actually. Not mad about that language.
So we got 5. From 0 to 12, it's no psychopathy. From 13 to 17, it's psychopathy possible. And 18 plus is likely a psychopath.
So, like, if you were in legal trouble as both a teenager and an adult,
Yeah.
that would give you
1
10
point each.
Oh, that's only 1 point each. I thought you got like a 5.
There was 24 questions, I assume.
Oh, sorry.
Was there?
No, there wasn't 24.
I think it's like you got like a 1, 2, or a 3 depending on where you answered.
There's 12 questions.
Yeah.
So
there's 1 point up, 1 point down, and 0 points for each one.
So like 0, 1, and 2.
Yeah.
Yeah. So not me would be 0
Well, actually, you only
points.
get okay.
Describe to me somewhat would be 1, and this is definitely me would be 2. Because if you answered definitely me for all of them, there's a potential that it would be
24.
Or if you answered the most likely to be a psycho, like the good one to be a psychopath for all of them, that's 2 points.
Yeah.
So if we got 5, what 2 did we answer? That's
Can we say somewhat for some of them?
yeah, and Luke's legal trouble.
That didn't affect our answer.
Weighed us down.
So at the start of that, I said the psychopath test was by John Ronson. And I was like, oh, that's an author. That's kind of weird for him to develop a psychopath test. But no, he didn't. He wrote the book called A Psychopath Test. And that's why that's that. But what website is that so I can see who actually wrote that? Because I remember doing a different psychopath test that was like, if you see a dead animal in the street, do you feel sad?
It's psychcentral.com. Medically reviewed by Timothy J. Legg, PhD. Written by Psych Central staff.
Oh,
on November 18, 2020.
That wasn't a very rigorous or...
So what we'll do is next year when we come back round to evil,
Yeah.
we'll do another psychopath test. Or we'll get Timothy J. Legg
To come on the podcast.
to come on the podcast.
To test us.
To test us, yeah, exactly. So, essentially, the next bit that I was going to go, the next route that I was going to take was going to be, I'm going to look into like the origins of like different religions and what they would consider evil.
Cool.
I did not find a lot. Okay, so Christians believe it originated from the Garden of Eden when Eve ate the forbidden fruit and the punishment was to endure suffering in life.
Yeah, that bitch.
It's fall, whatever. In Judaism,
Don't they have the Old Testament as well?
in Judaism.
Judaism, yes.
But I think like their opinion of the
Oh, fair enough. Yeah.
what evil is in. So I'm just going to read it. In Judaism, Yetzer Hara is the congenital inclination to do evil by violating the will of God. The term is drawn from the phrase, the imagination of the heart of man is evil. In traditional Judaism, the Yetzer Hara is not a demonic force, but rather man's misuse of things the physical body needs to survive.
Cool.
Such as the need for food becomes gluttony, the need for procreation becomes sex abuse, and so on.
Oh, I thought I was going to go with the 7 deadly sins.
Yeah.
But lost. But
It's weird that he used the term gluttony and not lust for the sex abuse.
Yeah.
Anyway, and that's, and then I was like, oh, interesting, let's see what Islam thinks. So Muslim teachings say that individuals should know, without having to be informed, which actions are evil and will contribute to the suffering of others, and which actions are good.
Oh, that's so much pressure.
Yeah,
That's a
the
lot of
inner
pressure.
sense of right and wrong is called the fitra. Muslims believe all human beings are born with this sense or instinct to live according to the laws of Allah.
That's pretty cool, actually. That kind of leaves it a bit open to yourself. Like, you know yourself, like.
Yeah, like it's like, oh yeah, like I think that's like that's the whole nature versus nurture thing. I think they're trying to say that like you can't be brought up evil, you're born evil.
Oh, if you
Do you know what I mean? They're
you can still have the inherent sense, but then just
choose
act
to
against
ignore
it.
it.
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, I suppose. Which is interesting because we just did the psychopath test, and what they're because isn't that a whole thing that they don't have remorse for their actions? Would that lead into the whole not wanting to listen to that inclination that they're born with,
Or not having that inclination.
or not having the
Yeah,
inclination?
because
Yeah,
they might not have the inherent inclination, but they'd know logically the rules of the world. And they can have like a logical argument with themselves about like, well, I wouldn't care if I did, but I won't because I can logically work out that they feel the same as I do, kind of a thing.
Luke shook out his book.
Oh, it's just because you mentioned Islam, and it's the main religion in Chechnya, which will be coming up later.
Oh boy, fun. So yeah, I was gonna go down that rabbit hole or whatever, but like, I couldn't find much more than those definitions and like the discussion we just had essentially, right?
Well, I can help you a little bit.
Oh yeah, please do.
So you mentioned the three kind of Abrahamic religions, but and what I looked up wasn't so much about Judaism or Islam, but there was a little piece about Christianity being like evil is in opposition to good, so the two things are a binary. No, they're binary. They're opposed to each other.
Yeah, okay.
Whereas the Eastern religions, so like Buddhism, Taoism, and Confucianism, has them more integrated, and it's more about they're not opposed to each other. You have to like overcome one.
Oh,
You
yeah.
have to overcome evil, and it's more integrated, and you have to like acknowledge the evil within yourself. So that kind of goes with the therapy concept of you have to acknowledge your shadow in order to kind of keep going forward in a wholesome kind of way.
Isn't there that thing in Native Americans as well, where it's either wolves or bears, that you have a good bear and a bad bear inside you, and whichever one you feed is the one that will win.
Yeah.
I think that's a good one.
Yeah.
I think it is wolves.
Yeah.
But to make it fit with New Mutants, they changed it to bear.
That was it.
Yeah.
It's
So the X-Men movie New Mutants, there's a character in it whose thing, I can't remember what her actual name is, but she's like Native American, and her power is something to do with like she can summon a demon bear or something like that.
No, it actually makes nightmares become reality.
But I think in the comic books it's specific to her thing is that bear.
Oh, okay.
Like that's her
yeah.
power or whatever.
Yeah.
Or whatever, her nightmare is
Well,
that
yeah, that's
bear.
her nightmare, is her bear.
Yeah. But so that's the character, and obviously the screenwriters really liked the quote about the two wolves living inside you, and whichever one you feed is the one that has power.
Yeah.
So they just used that quote but changed it to bear instead of wolf.
It's like copy this homework, but don't make it look.
Yeah, exactly. It's really funny because I remember like it's like the first
right.
quote that the movie opens with, and I'm looking at it like.
I remember because we went to see it together, and me and you left being like, "Well, not wolves."
Yeah, I was like that sounds familiar, but I'm like, did we get it wrong? And we Googled it, we did not get it wrong. So, might be a bit repetitive, but I came up with a game. This is a game that I made myself.
Okay.
So I've gotten a bunch of
The
quotes.
psychopath test.
So I've compiled quotes from famous figures throughout history, all about evil.
Oh, okay.
And so them talking about evil and everything like that.
Yeah.
So I'm going to give you the quote.
Yeah.
And you guys have to guess who said it.
Yeah.
Now, each person has two quotes. One's hard and one's a bit easier.
Okay.
So, like, if it was Luke saying it, Luke might say, I think that the things going on in Chechnya at the moment are absolutely evil.
Okay.
And then you'd be like, oh gosh, who said that? And then the next quote might be, I started the Queer Tales podcast. And then you'd be like, oh, that's Luke.
Well played.
Whatever. There's many quotes I could have said. I chose my words carefully. So, would you like to start?
Yeah.
Fire.
So, I suppose we could start with who said this quote? Ideas are more powerful than guns. We would not let our enemies have guns. Why should we let them have evil ideas?
I'm really bad with political
I
figures,
have
so I'm
no
going to take a
idea.
wild guess. Winston Churchill.
No.
Margaret Thatcher.
So that's actually quite a good guess. So I'll give you the next one. So the next quote by this person is, Mankind is divided into rich and poor, into property owners and the exploited. To abstract oneself from this fundamental division and from the antagonism between poor and rich means abstracting oneself from fundamental evil facts.
I didn't understand the quote, but it sounds like a Marxist kind of vibe.
It's a Marxist vibe, so knowing that logic, do you want to...
Carl?
Nope.
Oh.
Well, actually, I might get in trouble for saying it's a Marxist vibe. It's definitely along those lines of thinking.
Obama.
Marx's good friend.
They're good buddies, aren't they?
I think Osama is his daughter's godfather, actually. Yeah, so that's from Stalin.
Oh,
Right.
okay,
Yeah, so the good one is ideas are more powerful than guns. We would not let our enemies have guns. Why should we let them have evil ideas?
I'm not mad about that quote.
I'm not mad about it either, but it's a good quote.
It's a good quote.
Yeah. Sorry.
That makes sense
what?
on both levels, yeah.
It'll
It's
become...
very quotable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It'll become more clear that I am not condoning any of these quotes, particularly with the next one.
Oh.
Okay, so, next quote.
Yeah.
An evil exists that threatens every man, woman, and child of this great nation. We must take steps to ensure our domestic security and protect our homeland.
Trump.
Churchill?
Oh no, two very good guesses. So the next one is actually a follow-on from the exact same quote. I just cut it short. Hence, today I believe that I am acting in accordance with the will of the Almighty Creator. By defending myself against the Jew, I am fighting for the work of the Lord.
Oh dear.
Yeah, it's our boy.
Because once you said the Almighty, I was like, oh, that sounds like an American.
That sounds like
thing.
American and this great nation.
Yeah.
And Jew. People are going to think we're very anti-American. So, next one. Just as we won the Cold War, in part by exposing the evils of communism and the virtues of free markets, so too must we take on the ideology of radical Islam.
Oh God.
Ooh.
Just as we won the Cold War, in part by exposing the evils of communism.
George, our man.
Washington?
No, yes.
Imagine if George Washington was talking about communism back.
The other one. Bush, yeah.
Bush. No.
Junior?
Oh, very good. No. Nice one. I like your way. That's like, on The Price is Right, you say like, Kate says 1,000, you say 1,001. No, so the next one is, there are evil people. The press, the media, they are bad people. Bad people.
Oh, Trumpy.
And nobody likes what they do. Yeah, that's Trump.
That's Trump.
Oh,
Yeah, that
yeah.
seems Trumpy.
So, who said this quote? Free speech carries with it the evil of all foolish, unpleasant, venomous things that are said. But, on the whole, we would rather lump them than do away with them. Free speech carries with
Churchill.
it... Yeah.
Oh, I mentioned
He
it
also
earlier.
had
I gave you a
one
hint.
Okay, and the last one. The world is a dangerous place to live, not because of the people who are evil, but because of the people who don't do anything about it.
Love
Kate
it.
Murphy. I just love it.
And we'll end it there. Let's Thanks for listening.
Oh, I really hope it's not like a dictator said that or something. I'm just like, oh yeah.
Represent.
Hitler.
No.
Oh, Dalai Lama or one of those boys.
One of those boys, okay.
Gandhi?
So I'll give you the next quote.
Mandela.
No.
Okay.
You're very
They're all my
you're
guys.
so hopeful that it's not like Hitler again. So the next quote is E = MC squared.
Oh.
Oh.
That's it. That's the extent of what I researched for evil.
Okay.
And a little game I made and
Yeah.
Yeah, that was fun.
psychopath thing. So
I'm
yeah.
glad we're not a psychopath.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We were a united person.
And only if.
I might have failed that test. I think I would have been in the maybe section, which is fine.
But I think that's like a good example of how like a lot of those like indicators for psychopathy are like, oh, these could be fulfilled by like being depressed or like, that something traumatic has happened to you.
Psychopathy. Do you want to go first, or are we talking about Chechnya?
I don't mind. You feeling the Chechnya vibes?
I feel like we've seeded Chechnya.
We did, because it's like to do with Islam and how they're kind of pushing the regime. That word,
yeah. 12 push-ups a morning.
Yeah. So generally speaking, like LGBT rights in Chechnya have been a concern for human rights organizations. Generally speaking, but it's not just LGBT rights. It's like from what I've been reading, it's just horrible all around. Like if you're a woman, it's also horrible. If you're any kind of minority, it's just a horrible place to be. If you're a man, it's great. As long as you don't like other men.
Can I ask a really silly question? Where is Chechnya?
It's like, so Russia's there, and it's like on the borders.
Oh, is it like a former satellite, like a Soviet satellite state? Area.
And like even still, it's separate in the sense that it has its own president, its own prime minister, own government, everything. It's technically part of the state now, but it's like de facto, it's still separate. It's kind of the way that they're viewing it. So like on paper, they're connected, but they're not following a lot of the federal laws that Russia has, particularly when it comes to these issues. So generally, when it comes to Chechnya, there's no LGBT protection, even though like there is protections under Russian federal law, but they were just kind of like, oh yeah, like we know they're there, but we're just gonna not pay attention to them. But also Putin is supporting them doing so.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised that there was protections under the federal laws.
Well, it's just that like homosexuality was legalized in 1993. Yes.
In Russia, is it?
In Russia.
Okay.
During that period, so like 1991 to I think 1999, Chechnya was a separate state. Following like there was apparently two separatist wars that they had, called the First Chechen War and the Second Chechen War. They weren't very creative. So like after this period, there's kind of like the two main people, President Ahmad Kadyrov and then his son Ramzan Kadyrov as well. So Ramzan is the current head of the Chechen state, and then his father was kind of the one who was the head of the state beforehand and led him to where he is now. Yeah, so there's just like a little bit on the Wikipedia thing saying like President Vladimir Putin has empowered local leaders to enforce their interpretation of traditional Muslim values, even though federal law and in the Chechen law constitution, there's a law saying that they're non-secular, but they're pushing this Islam ideal onto everyone.
I'm so surprised. I never associate Islam with Russia.
Neither do I. Yeah, it was kind of really surprising. And like they took on Sharia law in the 90s as well, and that's kind of like where everything began, and that was with Yamano's dad.
Because like Turkey and stuff, my geography is coming out here now as well, but like Russia borders a lot of Islamic countries, so it makes sense that like the little countries in between and even those areas of, because when I think Russia, the first thing that comes to mind is like the Siberia Russia, which is like northern Russia, but I forget that like Russia's the biggest country in the world by a long shot. Like obviously because it spans so many, talking about the Islam thing, it's like I wouldn't have associated it with Islam either, but it makes sense given how big it is.
Yeah, so it wasn't actually Ahmad Kadyrov, I was wrong. It was Aslan Maskadov. Similar names. He was the one who adopted Sharia law in 1996. So under Article 148 of the Chechen Penal Code, it made consensual homosexual anal intercourse punishable by caning on the first two offences, execution on the third.
So that's a consensual homosexual.
Yeah, it said consensual, so like they were up for it, but the rest of the country doesn't.
Is that a little? Do you think that sentence is put in if you're raped by a gay person?
Oh, that person then would be fine.
That person is the person who is raped won't be sentenced to death, but
probably
the person who did rape.
Like a big part of the way that they're pushing this is they're pushing families against each other, to out people and stuff like that. So it would make sense that if they put that in, that if it was consensual, if one of them gets arrested, one of them he could just be like, "Oh no, I was raped," to get himself out. But then they catch the second person out. because that's the whole way that they're doing this, is like they're interrogating family members and everything to try and catch you if you are gay. So like they might pick you up even though they don't suspect you, but they suspect that you're related to someone, and they might be in hiding or something. There's been a number of stories that have come out of it since from people who've escaped, saying like if their families reported them, they would have like completely understood, because their lives would be in danger just as much as the gay person or bi person. It was usually gay or bi men. In 2017, that was like the one that was reported most. It was usually gay and bi men. There were some women involved as well. But then 2019, they didn't seem to discriminate on sex.
Was the law...
Modern family.
Was the law... What is consensual anal sex?
Yeah.
With another man?
Consensual homosexual.
Cool.
Yeah.
So I was going to say...
still do anal
with
your wife.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. Perfectly allowed. Yeah, so by the time that Ramzan Kadyrov like came into power, when he was prime minister, so before he became just leader of the country, he brought in like a virtue campaign. That was inverted commas for those who can see. Which was like a social policy. Didn't actually go at the LGBT people first, so I can't use my thing of if you're attacking gay people and you're so obsessed with them that you're probably gay. No, he attacked women first for immorality.
You could be trans.
But yeah, he was attacking the immorality of women, introducing policies for honor killings of the families, and pushing a lot of traditional gender roles on families as well. So this like all eventually led into the anti-LGBT campaign, but beforehand it was kind of pushing it in these other ways. So like forced reunions to divorcees.
Forced reunions for divorcees.
Thank you for reacting in an appropriate way, David. That's fine.
What's an honor killing? I was
also
waiting for a gap to...
I'll come back into that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
But yeah, if you had gotten divorced like during this period where it was kind of allowed, or if you left the country to do it, they'd force you back into that marriage.
Fuck.
So weird. How would they do that?
I don't know. There's pressures to wear the hijab, and then so like in the article it was like, and the raising of a whole generation of religious extremists through education and propaganda. So other things then were like women were perceived to be dressed immodestly. There we go. If they weren't like covering their hair, and they were, or if they were like showing shoulders or showing too much skin, and they were attacked with paintballs. If so, which interesting. Who walks around with paintballs?
Lots of people in Chechnya.
Apparently, yeah.
It's an interesting callback or like crossover with the single people in Ireland.
Oh.
When they used to get marked with chalk, or there's other material for marking sheep if they were still single. Yeah, that's an interesting like cross-cultural method of shame.
I think for this one, like the paintballs, I imagine the idea is like, the paint will cover them up instead because they're dressed immodestly or something. Oh. It's kind of the way I thought of it when I first read it. But
it's like
maybe it was taken from us. We taught them the way.
I'm really interested, like, what would happen if, like, the three of us were to go there as tourists and Kate walking down the road. And you, actually, Jesus Christ. Sorry, my mind was on would Kate get paintballed, and that would be kind of funny. But I thought you could be publicly executed.
I'm gonna clean my shoulder.
No, they come up to Kate with the paintballs, like, he's gay.
Switch to the real goals.
Yes.
So it goes on to like say like young boys are informed in school that they will face eternal damnation if they allow their sisters to go out without covering their hair. It also encouraged all children to inform the authorities on whether their parents are sufficiently practicing Islam at home. So this is kind of what I mean, where it's like it's not all about the LGBT, it's just in general they're pushing on these really traditional values for what's meant to be a non-secular state. So then Kadyrov's imposition of Islamic law contradicts, so I said earlier, wider federal law and Chechen constitution. But it's fine because Putin supports it. It's all good. But then Russia actually officially passed an anti-gay propaganda law in June 2013, which when I first read it, I was like, that sounds good. No, it's not.
Oh, I see. I was like, that does sound good.
Yeah.
No, it's anti-gay propaganda
law.
rather than an anti-gay propaganda.
Yeah.
Oh my god, what a great title for a podcast though. Like
I know.
anti-gay propaganda. That could be your drag name. Like
Anti-gay propaganda.
That anti.
The other anti. That was only in June 2013. But yeah, that you can't promote same-sex relationships, full stop, basically.
Okay.
And that's all of Russia.
So like
Since
queer
2013.
tales would be banned in Russia.
I have no Russian listeners, so this is exactly why.
It's the only reason.
So then the big kind of periods for persecution that were known so far was 2017 and 2019, where there was like two kind of periods that were considered gay purges, where there was like a huge active effort to kind of seek them out. So April 2017, there was an article by Novaya Gazeta. I thought that was the person's name until I read later that's the name of the newspaper.
Easy mistake to make.
There's another part later where I thought it was still a name. I'll come back to it. So yeah, April 2017, the article came out stated that more than 100 men were rounded up by police under suspicion of being gay, and 3 of them were killed. Then a spokesperson for Chechnya's political leader denied the reports, claiming that there are no homosexuals within their borders, and there's a quote then, as their own relatives would have sent them to where they could never return. In other words, their relatives would have killed them. Which is like a big part of what they're doing is like, that's honor killings.
Where the relatives will kill
Family members for dishonoring the family.
So
this also comes, this is an issue that is, when I was in Canada, there was a news report at the time of this girl who was killed by her brother because she had basically just disowned her religion, and like they were in Islam family, and he killed her because he was like, you're dishonoring
in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
Oh Jesus.
So this is kind of like a worldwide thing.
Yeah.
I'd like to clarify as well. When I say "oh Jesus," in Canada, it's terrible anywhere, but I'm
Surprised
that
Surprised.
it happens.
So he kind of went on after saying like that there's no homosexuals, and if there were, the relatives would have taken care of them. Thus, there could not have been any persecution of homosexuals by law enforcement. It's not possible because either the families would have taken care of it, or they're just not here.
So does that essentially mean that murder is legal in Chechnya? If I can make a fairly good argument that they were gay.
Yeah.
Class. So about our holiday to Chechnya.
Oh yeah, so like if I kill someone in my family and the police are like, oh, how did your mom die? I say, oh, it's an honour killing, and then they go, grand.
Yeah, probably.
Jesus.
Well, I'm not sure.
Yeah. You go look that up.
It does seem that like they're promoting honour killings, so they are telling like the families to, like, I think the way they're doing it is like, oh, report these people, but if they just turn up dead as well,
Yeah.
that would be fantastic. So according to Novaya Gazeta, who I still think sounds like a person's name, reports verified by the Russian.
Gazette though.
I know that part does give it away after I realised. I was like, oh yeah. But that was the thing. I read it and I was like, oh, that sounds like the perfect reporter's name. So reports verified by the Russian LGBT network, gay men were held at a secret prison in Argun, which is, I don't know, somewhere in Chechnya, and it described in many sources as a concentration camp where they were subjected to violence and torture, such as electric shocks, which, typical stuff. Happens everywhere, doesn't it?
There is electroconvulsive therapy, which would have been used for people with depression back in the day, and then it had been came to be seen in popular media as being cruel, but it actually does work, and you can opt to get it if all other kind of drug methods don't work for you.
Yeah, I'm assuming if it's still an option nowadays, it's probably much more controlled than what it was at the time.
Yes.
Where it's just shock them. It's like, how are they?
Yeah.
Oh, just do it again.
Yeah.
Turn it off. Yeah, so then I have a couple of dates. So 15th of April 2017, Chechnya's press minister, I'm not going to say his name because I'm going to muck it up, demanded, again, this is the part that I started to realise, he demanded that Novaya Gazeta apologise to the Chechen people, and I was like, are they asking this reporter to apologise to them? That's what I started putting it together. To the Chechen people for suggesting LGBT people existed in the Republic. And that if the paper, there we go, did not stop publishing hysteria and non-existent threats, then other people would, and this was quoted, take care of them. So basically threatening that we're going to kill you if you keep reporting this stuff.
And where is that newspaper based?
In Russia.
Okay.
Yeah. Then 11th of January 2019. So 2017, 2019 were the big times. 2017, I think it was 100 people or 150 people confirmed to have been detained, 3 people confirmed to have been killed, and then there's like more outside of that. That's only the ones that were killed by law enforcement, excluding OnlyCans. 11th of January 2019, it was reported that another gay purge, and that was quoted again, had begun in the country with around 40 people detained and 2 killed this time. And that's kind of where it's kind of left off. They were like the big 2, what they call purges, big. It was within a couple of months that they detained all these people in these concentration camps, and a couple of them died mysteriously while there. The main issue now is, from what I was reading about, is like people escaping but then being brought back. So in this month I read an article from February this month. That was March. This is coming out in March. So yeah, for February 2021, 2 gay men who had escaped from Chechnya, they were found in Moscow and brought back. They're now being detained. No one's seen them in a while. There's a huge chance that they're just going to disappear because that's what's been happening throughout the time.
So they went to Moscow and then the Russian authorities sent them back to Chechnya?
Yeah.
Jesus.
That's the whole thing where like Putin is supporting this.
It's the extradition thing.
Yeah.
That's horrific. Everything about that's horrific.
I just love the part where they're just like, oh no, we don't have any LGBT people. Those people that we have there, don't worry about them.
I think
That can't be, that's just...
so
storage.
before tonight you had told me about like vaguely about the Chechnya thing, and you had mentioned that exact one, being like, oh, we don't have any gay people in Chechnya.
Yeah.
And it reminded me of the Eurovision movie with Will Ferrell.
Yeah.
And how there's a really funny line in it from the Russian Eurovision entry where he was like, I don't know, looking at a guy or something, and then they were
I don't know the context, but
and someone was like, oh, are you
quite
interested?
complicated,
And he was
right.
like, what? No. And he was like, I'm from Russia. They're like, what is that? I'm like, oh, there's no gay people in Russia. And it's a big laugh, and you know,
Yeah.
it's kind of like a sad but mostly funny thing.
It's like dark.
Yeah, but that like the Chechnya thing makes that more depressing.
Yeah.
That's like there's no gay people in Russia. Like there are.
When you say that they get detained, is it that they've gone to prison?
Yeah. Even though it's decriminalized in Russia since 1993.
And I wonder, would they actually get asylum in Ireland at all if they're sentenced for gay persecution?
I'm not sure. I know that there's a number of like charities helping them to escape, and there's like the UN as far as I know, there's like a specific visa they can apply for to escape Chechnya in particular because of this reason. I don't know if Ireland's fine with it though.
I know there's definitely something in Ireland where it's like, oh, you can say that you're escaping persecution on the grounds of being gay, but then they'll like interview you to see if you are gay, and you have to like prove your gayness.
How do you prove your
It's like
Yeah.
just
Do you
imagine like
open Grindr?
just hold up 2 naked photos, one of a girl and one of a guy. Like, which one do you like? And you point to the guy. You're like, okay, cool.
Yeah, but it's especially difficult for people who are bi.
Which one do you like?
Oh, yeah, Jesus, that's fucked. I remember seeing a thing just in terms of like seeking asylum and stuff. Not to say that the UN or any other country is doing this for people from Chechnya, but there was a whole thing that like pirates from a certain country
Good choice.
The British Navy have been instructed to not arrest them, specifically because the penalty for being a pirate from that country is death, meaning if they arrest them, so essentially the millisecond that the British Navy arrest the people from this country for being pirates, they then have to bring them back to Britain to seek asylum, because they can claim asylum.
I was like,
for,
that's such a cool thing that they're trying to
Trying to
help.
protect
And I was like,
you.
no, we just don't want to have them in our country.
Yeah, they were told to not arrest them because the laws in their country is the death penalty, which would allow them to seek asylum in Britain.
Yeah.
Like the second they're arrested, they can say like, oh look, hey, I seek asylum if I'm being arrested anyway because I'll be killed when I'm at home. Then you have to bring them back to Britain. So they've been instructed to not arrest any pirates in this specific region. Just move on. Or stop the piracy and then just leave them at it because they don't want them seeking asylum. Which is horrific. Might be a similar thing with Russia, where it's like they don't want to give them asylum, even though maybe they could, because they disagree with the lifestyle, even though on paper, because I remember seeing a video ages ago about like two guys holding hands walking down a street in Moscow. It was like a YouTube video. Don't see what abuse they get, and they full on, like it's a 15-minute video, and like full on like attacked and beaten in the streets and stuff.
Yeah,
and it's really.
Yes, it's not just like the government are really evil. It's like the entire
people
society.
are also indoctrinated into that way of thinking.
they're all indoctrinated to it.
Yeah. But is that evil? The people acting like that, or is the system that lets it grow the evil thing?
In my piece, I'm going to argue there's no such thing as
evil?
a system.
Oh.
There's no such thing as anything.
But yeah, if you want to learn more about Chechnya, there was a documentary that came out in 2020 by investigative reporter and filmmaker David France, great name, called Welcome to Chechnya.
It is a great name.
It was the France part. It follows the work of activists rescuing survivors of torture in the anti-gay pogroms. Pogroms. So pogroms, I have it here. Pogroms is a violent riot aimed at the massacre or expulsion of particular groups, usually used against Jewish people. So a pogrom would have been...
Wow.
Kristallnacht.
Yeah.
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 Ah.
Because I thought it was like a misspell. I was like, oh, do they mean program?
Yeah.
No, they don't. So they meant pogrom. Pogrom.
That's a fun new bit of vocab. Yeah.
What's sad new bit of vocab?
Huh?
A sad new bit of vocab.
It's a fun
Yeah.
word to
I know what you
learn.
mean.
A sad context around it.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of other pogroms.
Just usually.
What about the Irish Revolution against the British? Would that be a pogrom? It was violent.
Yeah.
It was against a grouping, a political.
Were we trying to massacre them
Oh,
or
no,
expel?
not massacre.
Expulsion.
We were trying to expulsion them. Yeah.
We're bloody still trying to expel them.
I don't think it would be. I don't think it's like.
I know,
Yeah.
just in terms of like the definition kind of thing.
I think it's important to add as well that extremist views of any religion is terror, or even any ideology to a certain extent.
Well, then you basically render the word extremist mute, because extremist then becomes anything I don't like is extreme.
Well, you could say that like extreme Islam is everything that Luke just described, but extreme Catholicism is
Much
very,
of the
very
same stuff.
similar
Yeah,
in terms of like gender roles and
If
stuff
you
like
say like
that.
I have an ideology about extreme kindness,
Oh yeah,
Oh,
so
yeah.
so
so
I
then
think
extreme just becomes
I
a
think my
silly
whole
word.
thing is to not like when we were talking about evil, we're talking about doing these things to people rather than Islam being evil.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
Well, we'd know that if we began the episode with the definition of evil, which we didn't.
Which,
I know. Yeah, that's
when David first very much started being like, oh, I'm going to start first. I really, really thought you were going to go into the definition because I was like, that's how you always start. But we'll have it now. 2/3 of the way through.
that's okay.
I begin my notes by saying evil, much like gender, is a construct, but that's not the Wikipedia definition. The Wikipedia definition is the opposite or absence of good.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, very broad.
Huh.
So like unsalted rice cakes, absence of good, evil.
So that's saying it's a binary.
Yes, yeah, that's exactly why I looked into the Christian thing of it's a binary, it's the opposite of good thing.
Yeah.
And it actually, I tie that in more. Okay. Yeah, I think we would, as the three of us, think that it's not to do with the absence of good, and it's more like the everyday modern usage, which is more like a wickedness.
Yeah.
The other thing that I hadn't thought about evil is that it's got three different forms. So there's the personal moral evil, which is where one person will decide to do an evil thing to someone else, which is, I think, what we were talking about throughout this podcast.
Yeah.
The other form of evil is natural evil. So it's things like cancer and tornadoes and scary lightning. So there's no perpetrator of the evil.
Yeah.
It's just a natural occurrence of it. And the third
Interesting.
form is supernatural demonic evil.
Mm.
So it's more like a very much a concept that you want to like go away from or disavow, and act in the opposite of that concept.
Yeah.
So it's not a real thing. It's kind of like, I think, the opposite of the Ubermensch idea, where like the Ubermensch is where a concept of a perfect man that you want to strive to be. Supernatural demonic is like, here's an abstract thing that you definitely don't want to be.
Mm.
So like the devil and stuff like that would be kind of personifications of this idea.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, personification of evil. So for the personal moral evil, it was defined as unbalanced behavior of anger, revenge, hatred, selfishness, destruction, or neglect.
Mm.
Mm.
And I think that's kind of unfair, because I think if you're doing an unbalanced behavior, something is not cool with you
Yeah.
internally.
So that sounds like a mental health thing.
That sounds more like a mental health crisis
Yeah.
than evil.
Yeah, unbalanced is a very poor way to have put that as like an evil thing.
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh, you have problems, therefore anything you do from now on.
And so what I'm interested in, not so much like what evil is as a definition. I don't think like it exists as a thing, because I don't think it's evil to do something out of unbalanced behavior.
Yeah.
I don't think like the earth is evil for having earthquakes. And I appreciate like how evil works as a concept in terms of understanding what not to do,
Yeah.
kind of a thing.
Mm.
But yeah, I think it's kind of interesting the one when you said like the natural ones, like I like cancer and stuff, I never would have associated that with the word evil for some reason in my head, because I'm just like, oh, but like that just occurred, you can't do anything about it. So like for me, evil has to have an intention,
Yeah.
whereas these things don't. So like that one I find even more contradictory than the personal moral ones.
Yeah. And I think we'd also agree with like if a child does something and they might have intended to hurt their brother or something,
But they don't have an understanding at the same time.
but they don't have the capacity to understand what they've done is that wrong, kind of a thing.
That's the really interesting thing about the different definitions that I brought up at the very start, in terms of the Muslim Islam thinking, like people are born with that idea, they already know what's right and wrong. So if
Yeah.
they do it, that's a bad thing that they are doing, and they're knowing they're doing it. And yeah, I didn't think about the child aspect of it. Like children are expected to know
Yeah.
inherently
that's kind of
from an early age. That's
Yeah.
a new
That kind
Or-
of, yeah, that makes sense from the Chechnya thing, where it's like very much aimed at young boys at the moment through education and propaganda to report on everyone else.
yeah. Well, that's because when they're men, they'll teach their children, and then
Yeah, but also, like if we think from that point, it's a lot easier to indoctrinate children into this point of view. So is it actually like an abuse of power of playing on the adult versus child dynamic that they are going to get, like there's a higher chance the children will report people than their parents would to report on their friends and stuff. So are they aiming at young people particularly because they know that they're weaker minds and that they can convert them over? And interesting. I didn't, yeah.
Yeah. They didn't teach us that in
Problem
Catholic
matter.
school.
Continue.
That's good.
So I that's why I would kind of see the personal moral thing as irrelevant, because a lot of things that we call evil are committed by people with lack of capacity to understand that it's evil or lack of intentionality. So people with mental illness or intellectual disabilities make up a massive proportion of the prison population.
That's not evil.
And so I don't think it's evil if you don't understand the consequences of your actions, kind of a thing.
Yeah. So this is, because I remember before recording, when we had first come up with the idea, I was saying it to you and we were talking about like psychopaths, to say as to whether what they're doing is evil and are they evil people, because you were saying there was no evil people. At first I was kind of like, oh, but like there is, and then you convinced me otherwise.
I end my argument with that there is evil, but it's not the concept that we have.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah. But before we go into that, I wanted to talk about Spinoza. So he was like, evil is so he said anything that good is anything that is useful. So evil must be anything that hinders us from possessing anything good. So it's very much a utilitarian concept where it's like, if it basically, the word evil acts as a way to tell people, hey, stop doing that.
Okay, but then like social media is evil and everything that we use to procrastinate is evil.
Yeah, and it's just like the label evil means that, oh, well, if I see that as a sin, I won't do it, and therefore I will have a better life. Society will be better. Blah, blah, blah.
Oh, well. Maybe he has a point, but no, I don't. I disagree.
And he's also the lad who came up with the thing of you should pick the lesser of two evils.
Oh.
Yeah, which I hate. I hate.
Okay.
Because it's a false binary. There isn't always just two options. And I feel like if you're being presented with two options and then someone's like, well, you should, and they're both shit, and someone's like, oh, you should choose the lesser of two evils, that's just a way of like justifying to yourself.
Having to make a bad choice.
You don't have to, there isn't just two options. Like any complex scenario, unless it's literally a thought experiment.
Yeah, unless it is literally a
options.
question of yes or no, there is always other options.
Mm-hmm.
I would agree with that. Yeah, prior to you explaining it, I was same reaction to kind of David of like, oh, interesting, let's see.
Yeah.
Because I 100% would have been like, oh, of course pick the lesser of two evils. But no, that makes sense. There is always a third option. It doesn't necessarily mean...
X options, like,
yeah.
And it's a way to like kind of trap people into thinking there's only two options.
And it's a form of conforming basically to a system that might be against you in some way. It's just like, oh, but always just go with the lesser of two evils.
Yeah.
Accept it in that sense.
Yeah.
Or like, particularly when it comes to voting for government, lesser of two evils. Like,
Exactly.
Jesus.
Like America. Just
Yeah.
Trump versus Hillary, that was like the biggest thing that people who voted for Trump were embarrassed about it, always kind of went with, oh, lesser of two evils. And it's like, like...
There was literally third options.
There was plenty of other fucking options, but no,
He also has a quote that's like, if man is supposed to be free, there is no concept of good and evil as long as they are free. I think it's like, if man is supposed to be free and you are free, then to be truly free means that there is no good or evil because you don't have to think about it because you're just doing your thing.
Yeah.
I think that's what they're up to. With that
Right.
quote.
Oh, okay, but that like cuts out everything in life. Your social obligations, your personal obligations, your sense of responsibilities.
Yes, and this is exactly what I wanted to bring
up.
up.
If anything, his idea of being free is being a psychopath. Because you have to drop all ideas of responsibility where you just go through life and you don't have to think about it.
Yes, and I was getting really excited about this when you were talking about Islam and how the evil thing is when you restrict other people's freedoms, like their freedom to sleep with people who they want to sleep with and is consensual, and
just to confirm.
And this is something that gets me really annoyed, is this another false binary of freedom is either you have full freedom or you have no freedom, whereas there's plenty of non-freedoms that we're pretty happy with. So like a metaphysical one being like, we're okay with not being free to fly from the ground. We're like, we're not obsessed
we're okay
about
with
that. Yeah. Society,
Speak
we're like,
for yourself.
we're happy enough that we're not free to murder people.
Yeah.
Like no one's upset about their freedom to murder being taken away. So like,
it's like on occasion, but yeah.
So there's this concept of the freedom from and freedom to, and I wish it got brought up more in debates when someone says, oh, but that takes away our freedoms, because every freedom to do something normally comes with a freedom from something else. So like the freedom to go outside and not wear a mask is a freedom to do something, but it means then that other people are not free from getting COVID.
Yeah.
So I think a better adaptation of Spinoza's idea, me after my one module of philosophy class, is that it's something like, if man is supposed to be free, there is no concept of good and evil as long as he is free in the right ways, as well as being unfree in the right ways. So still having duty and responsibility to family and to society, but still free to go on Grindr.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the real evil is more like in the systems that don't free us in the right ways and keep us unfree in the wrong ways.
Okay.
So for example, having slaves, the right to own slaves is a freedom.
Yeah.
And the right to not be a slave is a freedom from slavery.
Yeah.
And we're okay with that being a concept of you lose one freedom in order for someone else to gain another freedom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, so I think that the system itself, so it's not the people, the individuals, it's more like the system of slavery is evil.
The system of slavery is evil, yeah, and the way I would view it is that it's like the freedom of one other person taking away the freedom of another one person.
Whereas if you wanted to murder me,
Yeah.
and I'm like, no, you're not allowed to murder me, then that would be your freedom being taken away for my freedom. So I'm not sure.
Yeah, so that plays the same way where my freedom, if I did murder you and and was allowed to, takes away from your freedom. So I think that freedom has to be like, your freedom should not affect another person's freedom.
We're absolutely fucked for F because it was going to be freedom. So what are we going to do?
And taking slavery as an example, do you think there's anything that anyone could have done or said to have ended slavery earlier than it ended?
Oh.
Well, Hamilton.
God, imagine all the things he could have done. He
just had more time.
He had more time, yeah. Jesus Christ. Could they have done anything? Like, I suppose the thing that came to mind the minute you said that was if it hadn't happened in the first place. So if there wasn't already a precedent set for boats going to Africa and literally kidnapping locals and bringing them over.
Yeah.
Then, like, that could have stopped it. But beforehand, maybe around the time that the northern states, if it was more like a blanket and we are not doing this, I suppose federal laws
I want to
being
question the
implemented
question.
sooner.
Ooh, question.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
asking such a question like that of like, is there anything that anyone could have said? Of course, but at the time period, they were growing up with this idea of like, this is okay. So what's the question exactly? Like, if we go back in time with our current views, or if we were born in that time?
Yeah, my kind of idea was that if you two white guys, if you imagine that we were born, if you're born in that time period, and let's say you grew up in a wealthy estate, and you had slaves, what would it have taken for you to release your slaves, your property? So this, in a way, that would make you significantly poorer, and you'd have to start actually working yourself.
So just
do we have to release the slaves?
before I answer that, my thought process on how I interpreted the original question is like, what could have been said at that time to end it sooner? It's more with the states anyway, more unification in terms of the federal laws versus the state laws, or more enforcements of federal laws versus state laws, or more bringing state laws in line with the federal laws, because
Chechnya.
State laws were kind of like, oh, do whatever you want with slavery, whereas like loads of northern states, no slaves, we're not doing that. Loads of southern states were like, yeah, we're doing the slaves, we don't care. So I suppose if like the federal law had come
more
in,
strict from the get-go.
more strict from the get, it would have ended earlier. Is that something someone could have said to end it? No. Civil War probably would have started sooner, I would assume, or maybe it wouldn't have started at all because it wouldn't be as ingrained, the right to slaves. Again, I don't know. I'd have to look up when northern states stopped it versus southern states continuing on and how long that divide was. But but in terms of what would it take for me to give up my slaves at the time, if I was in that mindset of the time,
They would have had to have been ripped away from
it
you.
would have. No, I think it would have had to be like if I was a plantation owner and I had slaves. Like if someone came to my door and was again, I'm not. Oh, how do I fucking say this without like so? If someone came to my door being like, oh hey, I'm just advocating for slaves' rights or whatever.
Yeah.
If I was born in the 1800s, would I have been like, oh gosh, yeah, I don't know. If a federal
The answer
agent,
is no.
if a federal agent came to the door and was like, oh hey, by the way, this is illegal now, you have to give up all your slaves.
Oh, then yeah.
Then I'd been like, yeah, cool.
Yeah.
And I think it would have been like, yeah. So I think what could have been done. When the northern states also gave it up, federal laws take effect and make it a blanket thing.
So
throughout the
basically,
whole states.
like you respect the legal system,
Yeah.
and that's what would have made you eventually give up your slaves.
Well, if it was me today, I can confidently say I wouldn't have had slaves in the first place.
Yeah, yeah.
If I was in that situation, it would have been a lawful.
Yeah.
Okay, I am now living in the United States of America. I need to give up slaves.
That's fair. Yeah, because you're
That's fair.
you're taking a trait where you're just someone who follows the law.
Yeah, exactly.
Back to the same time where if this law came into place where it was like, oh, you have to free all your slaves, then you would have just been like, well, that is the law. This is going to be unfortunate for me.
Yeah,
But
and I'm also starting from an assumption that I had slaves to begin with.
Yeah.
Which is like what would make me stop that illegal thing.
Stanford Prison Experiment.
cooler.
Okay. My first question is, what do you know of the Stanford Prison Experiment?
Okay, so I know that it was some guy, and he was like, I wonder what will happen if we get a bunch of people together, sorting them into either guards or inmates depending on their personalities. The guards were really cruel to the inmates, and the inmates were, but these were all like college students as well. And then the inmates were like a lot of mentally taxing things happened to them because the guards were quite cruel. And it was all about like, oh, if you're put into that position of power, how will you react, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And how did either of you, how did it end up? What was like the...
I think it was meant to last for like, I don't know, a certain amount of time, but it was stopped after like not a fraction of that. I think.
But I mean in the sense like, did the prisoners riot and fight back? Or was it just that it was the guards abused their power?
I think they did fight back.
Yeah, because that would make sense.
So they did answer a questionnaire about their family background, physical and mental health histories, and social behaviour. And if they were deemed quote unquote normal, they flipped a coin to decide if they were prisoners or guards. So what happened was, it was supposed to take 14 days. He'd set up a fake jail in some basement of a campus building. So he hired 24 participants. There was 12 guards, 12 prisoners. 9 of each were going to take part in the experiment, and there was 3 substitutes as well.
Mm-hmm.
They were all white middle-class men. They were all psychologically stable, and they received $15 a day, which would be the equivalent of $95 in 2019. So the prisoners, once they started the experiment, they had to be there 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
The guards didn't. The guards had shifts.
Oh.
Yeah, weird. So what happens on the first day is one prisoner has a mental breakdown. He says, I'm on fire or something, and he's let go from the study. He has later come out and been like, I just really needed to study. I was told I was a prisoner. I thought I'd be allowed to study in prison. I was not. I had an exam. That was the entire thing.
Love it.
And Zimbardo, the person running the study, has said that, the prisoners or anyone in the study were free to leave whenever they like. But it's on record that he actually said the only way you're leaving the study is for medical or psychiatric help. So no one tried to leave
Because
except
they
for the
thought-
breakdown thing.
Okay.
Because they thought, well, we wouldn't be allowed to leave.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was also funded by the US Office of Naval Research, which I think is interesting. But the way both of you said it, where it was like, Zimbardo basically like handed the guards a pair of sunglasses and told the prisoners, you're prisoners, and then just suddenly both groups of people start acting terrible and weak. So like the prisoners were like, submissive and stuff.
At first, yeah.
Yeah. So basically, he gave them very strict instructions to the guards to be like, here, so you're not allowed like physically harm them or withhold food and drink, but definitely try to create feelings of boredom, fear, no privacy, and call them by their numbers.
Okay, yeah.
Also, when the prisoners arrived to the fake prison, they were strip searched.
Okay.
They were also dressed in dresses to humiliate them, which is kind of some misogyny vibes, I feel. Also, so on the second day, there was a revolt.
There we go.
So the prisoners refused to obey the guards' instructions. The guards attacked the prisoners with fire extinguishers, and the guards created a privilege cell where you could be rewarded with better meals. The privileged inmates refused to eat in solidarity with their other prisoners. Zimbardo carried out this experiment, and he took on the role of the prison warden. So he's very much in the experiment, which would not be good practice for any, especially a social experiment. Yeah, and the point is, he doesn't have to do or say anything. The fact that the person who's running the experiment, who's paying your wages, is standing there, has an effect in and of itself. So he was running the experiment. His research assistant was also his girlfriend, which is also questionable.
Ethics.
In terms of...
Where's the forms?
Yeah, in terms of if you've got a principal investigator and their research assistant are both going for the same thing, that's not a good combination from a scientific validity point of view.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, this girl calls out that this experiment is immoral. And he then later says she was the only one who questioned its morality when actually another prisoner had said the same thing earlier. So basically, it's never been replicated.
Probably for good reason.
So they've tried to replicate it.
Oh.
Yeah, it's the results have never been replicated. Yeah.
Oh.
So they've done another one of those experiments. It didn't.
In the same
So
way?
actually, I think what were the results first?
Yeah.
So the results were that the guards acted like how they were told to act.
Yeah.
2 prisoners were removed early. One of them, and then the other guy was the first guy who went on the first day. So 1 prisoner left on the first day because he needed to study. 2 others left for being like, oh, it's not on for this experiment.
Yeah.
And then the kind of mainstream narrative from that experiment is that, oh, see, look, when you tell someone they're a guard, they'll act cruelly, and if you tell someone they're a prisoner, they'll act submissively.
Okay.
Okay. I don't think that's like...
And
accurate.
did it last the full 2 weeks?
No, it lasted 6 days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The fact that it's so flawed and it's so popular, that's a big problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know how did it get so popular? Why is this such a popular thing when it's like very clearly... Because like even the minuscule understanding I had of it from the beginning was always like, oh, this is what I know, and I know it's stupid.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's the wider view on it. Of like, I feel like the it's stupid part is the slightly less commonly known. Whereas if you were talking about it, people would be like, oh, this is how it works, and like this is what it showed. Like, oh, crazy stuff, isn't it?
One of the other things is that one of the guards, the cruelest guard, said that he knew what the researchers wanted, and that and they were told how to recreate it, and the quote from him was like, I wanted to give the researchers something to work with.
Okay.
I love it.
Because I think the way that they were hired was that they put out a flyer being like, do you want to be part of a prison study? And do you want to be part of a psychological study? 2 different flyers, and whoever responded to the prison study got put as a guard, and the psychological study was put as a prisoner, because another university replicated just the recruitment process and found that people who responded to do you want to participate in a prison study were higher in traits of aggression and authoritarianism. I've messed something up here.
Okay.
So I think what Zimbardo did was just put around a load of flyers saying, prison study, come see.
Oh.
And then this university, in order to show... They basically use the psychological study as a control group to see who responds to studies in general.
Yeah.
So I think Stanford Prison Experiment just was like, here, prison study,
Okay. Yeah.
come
on.
join.
Yeah.
And then when they repeated that recruitment process, they found that people who are higher in aggression and authoritarianism respond to the prison one in higher rates than just a person who would respond to a psychological
Cool.
study.
Cool.
One of the results from the study is that juveniles who are accused of federal crimes are no longer housed with adult prisoners because of the risk of violence against them. Now, I find that really weird.
As a result of the Stanford prison experiment.
Exactly. Yeah. Very odd that that would be
They
a
were all
result.
adults in the experiment.
Yeah.
Okay.
Weird.
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
There you go.
So.
Yeah, so,
OnlyCans.
Okay, so thank you for listening. If you'd like to find us on social media, we are at Podcast OnlyCans on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.
Yeah.
We are on YouTube as OnlyCans Podcast.
yeah.
If you'd like to email us for any reason, I don't know why you would, but in case it is.
For F.
or a suggestion for any letter coming up. Yeah, thank you for listening, and we'll see you next week with D. We're doing a bit
My
backwards. Kate's sister D.
Oh. You don't stand the Stanford experiment.
Stanford College in general.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of.
Just don't support them.